Good morning to our listeners in America and good evening to our listeners in Europe. My name is Tim Gunstone. I am the Managing Director of Viper Travel, and this afternoon I will be chairing a webinar called Powering Loyalty Anywhere and Revenue Everywhere with Technology. Now, before we start, I wanted to run through a bit of admin involved with this webinar. First thing, we want to make this as interactive as possible. If you look at your screen now, you'll be able to see where you can ask questions. Please do this. Please send through your questions, and I'll try and get them to the speakers. If you have a particular question for a particular speaker, try and mention his name. As well as the webinar, we have a white paper on this topic. It's not quite ready. We're talking about a couple of days before it's finally published, but we will be emailing you a link to this very useful white paper, which I hope you'll download and use from there. Right. One final thing, all webinar registrations will receive a video recording of this webinar tomorrow. So even if you're not online now, you can listen to it then. Right. So this topic, powering loyalty anywhere and revenue everywhere with technology. We all know here, everyone listening to this webinar, that travel is the world's biggest industry. And obviously, it's a global industry. It's one of its most fantastic elements. We all love working with all over the world, and that's one of the reasons we joined the industry. But what is happening, and happening very fast, is our consumers are changing. They've changed the device they're operating on, how they're interacting with us, and from the device they've changed the channel through which they are booking and buying and researching. But fundamentally, right at the soul of all our interaction with our customers, trust is still key. And that's pretty much what this webinar is about. If you can get the trust of your consumer, you'll be able to service them, and you can sell to the whole world. Talking about how consumers are changing, right now China provides more travelers than any other country. This is followed by the USA, Germany, UK, Russia, France, and so it goes on. Recent research estimated that to reach 88% of the world's travelers, you need to be online in 12 languages. Now this is a huge challenge, especially if you have complex products. If you throw in the cultural diversities that are critical to make customers trust and spend with you, it gets even worse. However, today we are very lucky. We have 3 experts in this area to explain what they do and how they manage to communicate with the world. We have Juan M. Cardenas, Director of Localization for Hilton Worldwide. We have Brian Lupuk, Localization Project Manager for HotelTonight. Mark Elkin, VP Solution Consulting for SmartLink. So hopefully we're going to get Juan to open up with his presentation. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hopefully we're going to open up with Mark. Mark, are you ready?
Yes. Thank you, Tim.
No problem. So you go ahead with your talk.
Thank you. And thank you for that kind introduction. And I'm super excited to be on the panel with both Juan from Hilton Worldwide and Brian from HotelTonight. There are several interesting and even disruptive macro trends in the world around us, 3 of which are particularly relevant to the travel and hospitality industry, its brands and its customers. The first is mobile everything. It seems there are new statistics and trends coming out daily around mobile, but looking recently at eMarketer, for example, it's estimated that we're going to pass 2 billion smartphone users in 2016 worldwide, and TechCrunch expects that to triple to over 6 billion smartphone users by 2020, thanks to massive acceptance and growth in the emerging world. If you think about all the changes with mobile payment technology, and especially proximity payments such as Apple Pay, in the US, that's expected to reach $9 billion in 2015, and then expected to more than triple to $27 billion in 2016. And if we look to 2019, $245 billion is expected to be spent in the United States alone on e-commerce transactions, and $95 billion of that is estimated to be spent on mobile travel sales. An important contributing factor to mobile everything is that consumers are now more comfortable spending money and booking travel and hospitality on their mobile devices. 51.8% of digital travel bookers are expected to use mobile devices to book travel in 2016. And personally, as a jaded member of Generation X, I'm always told to consider the millennial view. And they're increasingly saying, be mobile ready or we'll move to a competitor who is. So why is this? Firstly, they're a mobile first generation. And secondly, it's because they're looking for on-demand economies. Uber and Lyft are common and familiar examples of an on-demand economy that have taken off, notably in local and short distance travel. But in fact, travel and hospitality is one of the original on-demand economies in that a consumer chooses a destination on their terms. This makes occupancy somewhat unpredictable, and then they go away, at least until their next trip. And also, we now live in this world of Google micro moments. I want to know something, I want to go somewhere, I want to do something, I want to buy something. And from a content angle, all this demands speed, agility, and for the pace of content creation and distribution to keep up. However, this is difficult because of platform fragmentation. In general, notice how many more content management systems and marketing automation platforms there are in your tech stack. Then consider mobile fragmentation, where users are running all sorts of different operating systems and different hardware versions and screen sizes that you have to support. And for travel and hospitality specifically, we can't forget the in-house legacy hotel and flight booking systems, which have seen lots of patches and it makes them hard to upgrade and contain so much valuable data that to rip and replace is almost impossible. We can also identify two stages that travel and hospitality companies go through. The first stage is emerging, and the second stage is evolving. Our guests today, Juan and Brian, were emerging into the market at different times over 90 years apart, but both looked to technology to aid their success. With Hilton started with brick and mortar, but they would have never built a hotel empire that offers almost 750,000 rooms in close to 100 countries and territories without keeping up with the times vis-a-vis the latest technology. And as the technology moves across the channels from brick and mortar to call center, to the internet, to apps and mobile. And then when HotelTonight was emerging as the way to book luxury, such as Hilton Hotels last minute, it had 21st century technology available and soon became a go-to app service downloaded over 14 million times. Both brands now are evolving, with each looking to the next technology and the advantages it offers. And I'd like to point out as well that the airline industry exhibits the same two-stage structure, from those who own the planes and operate the flights, once emerging, now evolving, to those whose agile booking systems, payment processing, and smartphone apps fill the seats on the plane, thereby emerging successfully with the challenge of evolving appropriately. So what binds these three macro trends we discussed, mobile everything, on-demand economies, and platform fragmentation, and the two stages emerging to evolving that are evident across travel and hospitality sectors? It's powering loyalty anywhere and revenue everywhere. So simply put, this is generating recurring revenues requires loyalty, which requires giving customers what they want, when they want it, wherever they are in the world, which today is all but impossible without the use of technology. So let's take a look at what customers want. Customers want to see a clear value and a compelling offer. They want to feel that their evolving expectations are being met, and they want to enjoy a consistent brand experience across all devices. And knowing what customers want, this shows us what brands must do. And to be successful, brands must provide a compelling value-led offering. They must keep up with and meet evolving expectations, and they must offer a hassle-free customer experience consistently to inspire loyalty. So now let's see how our Hilton and HotelTonight do all this and more to keep their customers coming back. So now I'm going to transition to Juan to speak.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here very quickly. All right, let's see if that works. Can we all see the screen okay?
Yeah, looks good here, Johan.
All right, fantastic. So good morning, afternoon, everyone. Hey, so Mark spoke about a couple of things, right? Some about trends, some about companies, potential positions, and what we need to look at and where we need to look into. But let me start with a quote of Conrad Hilton. Success seems to be connected with actions. Successful men keep moving. They make mistakes, but they don't quit. If you look at this, this personifies pretty much where we are in the global economy today. 10, 20 years ago, you had time to stop, think, analyze, make a decision, test it, roll it out to production. In today's world, those time frames have really shortened, and the ability for us to respond to business needs really changes with the larger and the more global your company is. So if we look at the spectrum of complexity, Hilton Worldwide is represented across 13 brands, including its loyalty program. We've got around 4,500 plus hotels and resorts worldwide, represented across 97 countries. Now, Mark made a comment earlier, I believe Tim, said that 88% of the world's population is targeted or is addressed with 12 languages. Well, for our immediate need and because of the footprint of our breadth of brands, we've actually gone in and said, okay, hold on, our needs are actually covered by 22 unique languages. And when I say 22 unique languages, I mean it is not a variation of Spanish or a variation of French. French is one, Spanish is one, German is one, and so on and so forth for 22. And the reason we got to this conclusion is as we look at things, and the image is fuzzy for a reason, many of you may be feeling like this. Hold on, way too much content, way too many things, too many processes to follow, and at the same time I have way too many options. So what comes up in the natural progression of understanding and reviewing and trying to figure out what we should do? Questions around the growing demand for in-language products. The more digital we become, the more widely recognized we start to evolve, the more demand for those in-language products start to surface. At the same time, we start looking at how do we prioritize? So what are the type of things that I should do first, second, third? So Mark was talking about, do we evolve? Do we grow? Do we emerge? What do we do? Part of that will be addressed with this question. Then we have languages. So let's be frank. For many, many years, U.S., English, and English-speaking countries have had the mentality of, look, English is enough. That's no longer the case. That mentality is very quickly punished by consumers when we're not able to communicate to them in their native language and in a way, in a manner that they're able to interact with us. So then that surfaces the second question, says, hold on, so is one language too few? Or is 100 too many? What is that magic number? And then that also comes up of, great, we've decided we're going to do 22, 32, 10, 5 languages. Great, so which languages do we tackle and why? And then, most importantly, as we all know, depending on the size of the companies and even bigger or smaller companies, we need to look at our budgets. We need to look at where we invest our product and where we're going to get our highest return for investment. So do we solely focus on word counts? When we look at vendors, when we talk to partners, are the cost per word the only metrics we need to use? Those are all items that when you start looking at the correct path, it can really get a lot hazy. So what are the things that we need to focus? Well, if we start from the beginning, we need to first define what are we talking about? What is localization? And that's a question to ask each one of you. So based on that definition that you thought, are you sure about that? Are you sure that's the right definition? So let's look at this very quickly. If we go out with the bare minimums, most of us, or most people overall, confuse translation and localization as one. If we look at translation in a very simplistic manner, it's really replicating what we do from the source language, and that could be English or it could be any other language. But we also have two additional components we need to take into consideration. One of them is localization and transcreation. Transcreation is a term that has started to take hold more and more in the last couple of years, given the fact that localization, just purely on a changing the meaning and tweaking a couple of words, is not enough. So now, depending on the product, depending on the market, depending on the type of marketing initiatives that you want, now you need to ask yourself, is the product as is sufficiently localized, meaning is it tweaked enough for the regions, for the markets, for the language, or do we need to look at a transcreation process where we truly redefine how we're talking about a product, how we present the product, and most importantly, what does that product try to convey? Excuse me. So as we look at that, what are those building blocks? So where do we start? What do we do? What are the type of items that we need to take into consideration? So for starters, part of the issues that we surface in many of companies starting out in a localization or translation or transcreation process is the larger you are and the more languages you have or want to tackle, the more people that have an opinion on who, what, when, why, or where. So as we look at this, we absolutely need to look at what a style guide from our brands need to be. The more we speak to the global market, the more or the higher the risk that the branding starts getting diluted. What do we try to convey and how we're recognized one country over the other will necessarily change, but will it need to change so much that the essence of what the brand is trying to convey globally warrants it? That's why when you start looking at terminology, when you start looking at style guides, we need to understand what are those regional nuisances, what are the things we need to stay away, and most importantly, what are the unique changes that we absolutely have to make. Not every change is the correct change. Not every difference is a required difference. So we talked about style guide, we talked a little bit of terminology. Now we talk about translation memory. And I'm sure many of you have heard this term, many of you have talked about what that means. In essence, think about it this way. Huge database, wherever that may be, where every single piece of translations that you've ever conducted is housed. And every time new translations come through, translations, localization, transcreation requests come through, it's going to get repurposed. It's going to be leveraged. You're going to have a much broader breadth to manage your cost, improve your turnaround times, but most importantly, you're going to be able to manage, maintain, and govern your brand, your consistency, what you're trying to convey, and ensure that the teams that participate within that channel uphold a certain set of rules. Call it a sandbox, if you would. But all of this is perfectly fine if we don't have a process. If we don't have a process, then you start asking your questions. Do I have a localization scorecard? Do I need a localization partner? If so, which one? What should my internal process look like? Many of you, depending on if you're a CEO, director, VP, or just a manager trying to put forth a process, how do we acquire governance and C-level buy-in? And then how do we bring everything together, and how do we or should we implement a translation management system? If you think about it, there is no cookie way or cookie cutter approach that I could say, look, if you follow step 1 through step 6, you will be successful. The important thing is that each one of the companies, each one of the people represented are looking at this from an organization perspective as to what is the right approach, where do we want to go, and then start putting together those frameworks that will allow you to grow and be scalable. So for that, part of the recommendations that I'll speak to is looking a little bit about a centralized process. One, what do you mean by a centralized process? Well, if we put it very simplistically, that centralized process will, in essence, govern the technology. We'll look at the vendor management. Who do you work with? Are you working with level 1 vendors, both from a technology and services perspective? What does that localization process look like? What's the workflow? Who does what first, second, third? Who gets notified? Who approves? Who does the legwork behind the scenes? There needs to be very clear measurement and reporting KPIs. So how do we define success? That should be one of your first steps. It is not a, we will build them and they will come. It's we will build them, we are targeting a specific metric, and then how do we react to the market and to the feedback that we get? Obviously, there needs to be a central process for escalation and for the linguistic review process. How do we uphold terminology? How do we uphold style guides? And that's the reason and pretty much the responsibility from a gatekeeper's perspective of what that centralized process is. But we understand at the same time that the world is too big for us to say, I will do everything and everyone will listen to me. So with that, we need to also take into consideration that even if we have a centralized process, we need to look at what a decentralized implementation plan looks like. So what that means is that we will look at our regional partners to be the subject matter experts on things local. I can never fight or refute someone that's actually in market living the day-to-day. They are the experts in what happens. But having said that, it is also our responsibility to ensure that that central team is also able to come back to us, provide feedback, and utilize the tools that will feed the consistency in our brand messaging across the board. So what that means is if someone in Japanese wants to make a change to how a brand or a term is managed, is that also a needed change or a needed term or a different process that we can also replicate across the different languages? Is it going to differ based on the maturity of your brand from a footprint perspective when you think about a global perspective? There are absolutely going to be key stakeholders in the brand style and glossary guidelines. They are the ones that are helping set that direction. Most importantly, and part of what I've talked about so far is digital, but we know that there's a much broader world out there than just digital. If your process has been thought out properly and the centralized process put in place, then these are services that you should be able to open up to your organization and have a very clear view of how they can manage, how they can leverage, regardless of channel. Call it print, call it TV, call it radio, call it digital. And most importantly is the ongoing communication that exists, working with the marketing teams to leverage processes that not only meet local needs, but are also responding to the demands of those consumers. In all, we need to ensure that we're harnessing the advantage of a centralized process with the flexibility of a locally implemented strategy. And as I wrap it up, I did want to close with just one more term. And we are in hospitality. We are hospitality. And as such, part of the mantra that we live by, at least within Hilton Worldwide, is it has been and continues to be our responsibility to fill the earth with the light and warmth and hospitality. I think that this depicts very clearly that it's not about us, it's not about technology, but it's about the customer. It's about how can we be even more hospitable, both from a services perspective, not only on heads and beds, but also for customer perspective and a service and a client service perspective. So with that, I will pass it along.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a really interesting presentation. We're getting some questions in, which hopefully we will cover at the end. But one question which came to me as I was listening to that is, where does localization sit within Hilton? Is it with the individual hotel? You covered it, but is it a marketing process? Is it customer service process? Is it, where does it fit, both in the brand and in the individual properties?
The central team, for all purposes, sits within a hovering department, right? So we're not primarily focused only on brands or commercial services, but we overall look at a digital department that services the organization from a need base. So what my team does is we may fall within digital just simply because of the nature of what we do, but at the same time we service all the other organizations, call it legal, call it brands, call it marketing, call it e-commerce. We service all those organizations through the centralized process that we've put in place.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much. Please stay online. We will be getting more questions to you, but we should move on to the next presenter, and he is Brian Lopuk. I hope I've pronounced that right, Brian. And you are the Localization Project Director for HotelTonight. Brian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Let me show my screens.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. Go ahead.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Lopuk. I head up localization here at HotelTonight. Thank you very much for having me. HotelTonight is a mobile-only app, so we're kind of on the cutting edge, as was mentioned, with mobile-only technology. And we really want to make booking and enjoying a place to stay really fun and accessible. We think we have a really good product and people like using it. We were founded in 2010 right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We got our first office in 2011, expanded internationally in London in 2012. And that's when I came on board and we started localizing our apps in 2012. We did German, Spanish, French, and Italian, so the big European languages. And then we just recently added Russian. When we expanded, we rolled out our continental European inventory at the same time. So the hotels came at the same time as the languages did. And we opened a couple of new offices this year as well in Paris, Berlin, and Toronto. Even though our name's HotelTonight, in our world, last minute doesn't just mean tonight. We started out as tonight only. That was our little niche market. But since then, we've expanded to booking up to 7 days in advance for stays lasting up to 5 days. So you can book today for a stay starting on Thursday if you want, or Friday or Saturday. We are a mobile-only platform. So even though I will talk about our mobile-only website, it is only available on mobile devices. What sets us apart is that we deal with a lot of hotels, and we offer users who are booking on their phones a curated list, so only the best deals for that day. We also use technology to give them a lot of different services. For example, ACES, which is our personal concierge, and you can just chat with a person right on your mobile device. Find out where to go for dinner in the area. If you want to get extra towels for your room, or if you want to get a late checkout, that person will totally arrange it for you, and it's in real time. We also leverage the phone's geolocation to offer people special rates depending on where they are in train stations, airports, or even around the hotel. We'll also guarantee a rate. If you take a screenshot with your phone, it's super easy now. You can send it in, and we'll match it. Tonight plus one is a function where you can add a second night at a reduced rate, and that's offered to you right on the phone too. It'll pop up during your stay, and you can just accept, and everything is done. Don't have to put in another credit card or billing address. And you can also track the rates in different markets. So if I'm going to Tucson and I want to know, if it's better for me to book today or tomorrow, the app will tell me if prices are going up or down and how many hotels were added, and I don't even have to open the app and search. So all this is really done on the fly, which is really interesting. As I mentioned, we also have a mobile-only website. We just launched it this year, and it's in keeping with our mobile-only philosophy. This solves the problem of platform fragmentation that was mentioned for us. So anyone on any mobile device can use the same site. So it's a great option for people who don't have iOS or Android. Those are the native apps we have. And it looks just like our app, so it maintains brand awareness. So when you're using HotelTonight, you'll definitely know you're using HotelTonight, be it on iOS, Android, or on your web browser. And naturally, we've localized it as well to give everyone that same localized experience. Our approach to localization, as Juan mentioned, is really not to render the English message, but to make the user smile and want to book a room. We have chosen for transcreation rather than translation. Obviously, if it's a button that says save, it will be translated. There's not many ways to say that. But an example I like to give is, for example, for an American description of a hotel in Germany, we'll say, chill out and enjoy a German beer. But for a German audience, obviously all beers are German, and that kind of doesn't make sense. So we'll maybe call it the local brand or write something else. For example, a hotel in Cologne, every German knows that the beer in Cologne is Kölsch, just like white beer in Bavaria. So we'll definitely localize that and give it an extra appeal for our local users. The tools we use on the back end to localize, so not only are we leveraging technology on the front end for our users, but we also make use of a lot of neat different tools on the back end. As Juan mentioned as well in his presentation, we have a style guide for English and all of our languages. And part of creating brand awareness is our quirky HotelTonight voice. We really pride ourselves that our hotel descriptions are kind of interestingly written. Oh gosh, we're having a fire drill here. Of course, during a webinar. I will stay on the line though. We leverage our SmartLink translation memory for localizing our app and our back end. And we have a term base, which is called TermWeb, that we use for company-wide terminology. My guidelines for my team is that if you spend more than 3 minutes thinking about how to render something, you're doing it wrong. Write something else. Because if you have to look it up, it's probably not going to sound natural. If you have to look up the word for pillow top mattress or I don't know, rainforest shower or waterfall shower, your readers probably aren't going to know what you're talking about either. So just write something else that conveys the message. And of course, it's not a government text where every nuance has to be rendered. Add or subtract as you see fit. And this really helps us save time, which is important for a fast release schedule. and money, and gives us a more natural result. So people can work really quickly if they just draw on what they know. A bit about our localization process. So every time the English content is added, we don't wait. It's pushed to a feature development branch on our apps. Sorry, there's a big fire drill going on here, if you can hear it. Every time a localization file is changed, it's automatically, every change is detected and it's imported into SmartLing, our tool. I don't even have to worry about it. I know when something needs to be localized. I go ahead and proof the content, and I can add notes and screenshots and to give my team some context. And the team is alerted. They work directly in SmartLing, localize the strings. I'll proof it, or my team will proof it, and then they're pushed back to the branch, and we'll generate builds for QA and localization QA. So it's a very quick and very easy process. Everything's on the mobile platform. Everything's internationalized already, and we can just add our localizations, proof, and go. As I said before, we're all mobile, so our localization process is pretty streamlined. It's very easy to localize for mobile platforms. They support most of the localization features, right-to-left languages, plurals. I don't have to worry about it. It's not like the old days of localization. Remember the big 5-character sets sorry. So the mobile website needs some code level TLC for localization, but again, we have Java libraries and it makes it easy. So looking at technology there. Our release cadence is a couple of times a month, and the iOS platform obviously has to go through the review process, but other platforms allow for A/B testing, limited releases. We can roll out a build to 10% of the users or 20% of the users on Android and see what the adoption rate is, see if it's crashing, see what's working and what's not. It's also a company-wide initiative, so once our alpha and beta builds go out, everyone in the company downloads them and has a look, so everyone kind of does QA. Localization's not in the closet or separate. We have a team of in-country market managers who speak the languages and whom I rely on to take a look at the app. I take all the feedback and I make the changes, and especially to content that goes out to our hotel partners, just to ensure that all the terminology is correct. And as was mentioned before, a term base is very important. We have a company-wide term base, which is available to anyone in the company, as well as to external marketing users, and this helps us ensure our terminology is consistent, and it allows input from anyone at HotelTonight. So anyone can make comments on terms, or make changes, make suggestions, etc. So that's it. Please download HotelTonight if you haven't had a look at it. The address is there, and the promo code is BLOPUC, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as everyone else does.
Thank you very much, and I hope the fire exercise hasn't been too distracting for you.
I'm sorry about that.
We couldn't hear anything. It's not a problem, but I imagine
they're just waving at me to evacuate the building, but I'm sure it's just a drill. So.
Okay, good. Let's hope it is. I have a quick question. How you mentioned translation memory. This is both for Mark or any of the panelists, in fact. How does the industry handle translation memory, and what strategies should we be using there?
How does the industry handle it?
Yeah, how does the hotel industry or the travel industry handle translation memory in particular?
Well,
this is not just for you; it's also for Mark or Johan.
Well, if I can, I guess chime in off the bat. Translation memories are becoming very important in any industry, and I guess especially in the hotel and travel industry, because there is so much specific terminology. For example, like as I said, pillow top mattresses, or hot tubs, or jacuzzis, or even water slides. things like that, they might seem like generic terms, but you don't want to use different terms in all of your material. So that comes back. The translation memory is very important now for avoiding doing the same work over and over again. And especially in bigger organizations where when you have documents coming at you from different departments, some paragraphs might have been done already, or they might be recycling them, or they might be sent out to different freelancers. So using a translation memory really helps you keep the content on brand and deliver the same message, but also saves you time and money because you're not retranslating or relocalizing the material again.
Yeah, I see.
And
you mentioned your... Go on.
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, you please go.
Oh, I was going to say, overall, translation memory in the last, I'd say, 2-3 years has become a commodity. So whoever you speak to will promise and will profess that they can give you a translation management solution, and it is the best in the industry. To be frank, anyone can do a translation management system, a translation memory. It really comes down to how it's implemented and the consistency in which you, the customer, right, manage your source content. So the more consistent, or the more you're able to customize your translation memory to be very clear on the situations and the use cases on when things need to be leveraged. So it's very different if you're translating something for Hilton and then you're translating something for a Conrad property. Maybe the same text, but the voice and tone may be different because of personality, because of brand guidelines, so on and so forth. So it really comes down to is how you and your partner interact with translation memory and ensure that it's set up in a way that's conducive to leverage that high return and lower your costs. And many companies may have decided to insource the management of that translation memory. That's okay if they know and have the expertise. But at least from a traveler's perspective, or actually traveling hospitality company, more and more I'm seeing is that they partner with specialists that know how to do this and can come up with strategy and how best to manage it for you.
Okay. Mark, do you have any feedback on that?
No, I thought that's great. The main thing is, if you're spending money on translations now, you own a translation memory. You've paid for that translation, you own it. And I think the key is to have the capability, as Juan and Brian mentioned, to apply that translation memory in the right way to the right project to gain the optimal leverage. And you will see situations quite common in the industry where you'll get 30 to 40% savings in doing so. And by controlling it, then you'll have the ability to make switch providers much more easily as needed.
Okay, Brian, we have a question for you coming in from the audience. You've launched your app and your mobile web. What driving the mobile web, and are you seeing any massive geographical differences there? I suppose this ties in is do you need to have more localization technology with the mobile web as opposed to the app, or vice versa? Do you have any feedback on that?
The mobile web is actually quite easy to localize. Thanks to the translation memory, actually, a lot of the content was reused from the app, so we didn't have to do it again. The reason we did launch a mobile website is, as Mark mentioned, the platform fragmentation issue. We had a Windows version, but the uptake on it wasn't very. There weren't that many Windows Phone users. So we discontinued the support for the Windows Phone app, and we channeled our efforts into mobile web because it not only fills the gap on other platforms like Windows, but it also, people who go to HotelTonight.com and expecting to book a room can now do it on their phone. Before, it would just be our normal website where they could download the app. But a lot of people want to book a room right now. As you said, mobile is super fast, real time. They want to book a room right now. They maybe don't want to download the app, or don't have room on their phone. So that really allows us to capture those users who are web, on the web and just want to book right away and don't want to download an app or have an app experience or have an app on their phone.
Yeah, you mentioned the quirky style of your website and your content. Does that work globally? I mean, are the British more dry, or the French? I don't know what the French would be, but does it work globally, or do you have to work quite carefully with that?
That's actually one of our biggest challenges, and a lot of the times we have to do complete rewrites. Each one of our hotels has what we call a hotel profile, and because it's mobile, we don't have paragraphs and paragraphs of text describing the hotel and all the banquet rooms or amenities. We have 3 or 4 bullet points which describe the hotel, kind of in a quirky style. So, for example, you want a waffle bar? Whoomp, there it is, or you got it, or things like that. It's kind of one-liners, and a lot of the times they're written in a very American slang style. They'll use words like hangry, which is a combination of hungry and angry, which don't exist in other languages. So I always tell my team, if you have to spend a lot of time trying to render it, just write something else. So it's really good to have a team of creative people who can actually do that and who aren't just bent on rendering the English message. Because, yeah, a lot of the times they're not funny in other languages, or there's puns or plays on words. So it's better to just come up with something funny that works in the other language.
Okay. Johan, do you have any feedback on that? Because obviously you have a lot of brands with different styles. Do you have any insight onto that?
Absolutely. It's interesting to look at need versus want. Everyone wants everything, but not everyone needs everything. So it's an ongoing challenge, as Ryan has brought up, is in determining at what point do you say, look, this truly needs to be localized or transcreated versus translated. There's no magic wand that I can give you there, especially with hotel content, where marketing content and fluffy content many times gets even more complex to put in language. There's 2 components, right? There's the feel, the look, and the navigation element of how you drive people into a website, mobile or not, and then also how do you capture their loyalty with content and product. So definitely there absolutely needs to be some level of localization and transcreation from a content perspective and localization from a product perspective. I just don't think it's as widely different in terms of not everything has to be so unique, because again, it just compounds the level of complexity of what you have to upkeep.
Okay, cool. We are almost out of time. We have lots of questions coming in about your fire alarms, Brian, but apart from that, I think the audience is very engaged, and I'd like to thank you so much for giving your time to do this webinar. Once again, people out there, we will be publishing a white paper on this topic. We will email you all a link to that white paper so you can download it, and by tomorrow we will also send you a link to the recording of this webinar. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank Mark, Joanne, and Brian very much for your time, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.